Just when you thought pastry was off the menu, today on the Low Carb Cook, I'll be making real quiche Lorraine with the most convincing low carb, crumbly, short crust pastry casing you've ever tasted. The key to so many dishes we're used to eating is convenience, and often part of that convenience is how easy something is to handle, and that usually means wrapping the gooey bit in either bread or pastry. Now, when pastry is one of the first things to go on keto and low carb lifestyles, we often feel like we're missing out. Personally though, I've made it my mission to create the best low carb replacements, and I have a recipe for short crust pastry that I doubt you could tell from the real thing. In this episode, we'll be making the most authentic quiche Lorraine, complete with crumbly pastry base. So let's get stuck in. So to start this recipe off, just to make the pastry base, we're going to start with 100 grams of almond flour, 100 grams of lupin flour. Now, I prefer to use lupin flour in my baking. It has the same amount of net carbs as coconut flour, but it doesn't add that coconut taste to a savory dish, which I don't really like. I have 100 grams of Vital Wheat gluten. That's going to add some flexibility, and that's going to help when you're rolling out this pastry. Keeping that ratio of half fat to flour that you're used to with a traditional pastry, I have 150 grams of standard white lard. Now, lard is a monounsaturated fat. It's absolutely fine to consume so long as you're in ketosis. I also have 1 teaspoon of xanthan gum. That again is going to add to the flexibility of your pastry. And I have a teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt. And finally, I'm going to use 10 milliliters of white cider vinegar. This is going to help keep our pastry crisp and crumbly, and it has a very pungent aroma, but that will disappear in the bake. Next, for our filling, I'm going to start with 12 free-range eggs, 400 grams of pre-grated cheddar. You can pick if you like strong or mild, 400 grams of diced bacon bits, 250 milliliters of lactose-free full-fat milk. That's the lowest carb I can find. I've got 400 milliliters of double cream, another pinch of salt, that's just for our filling, and some ground black pepper for taste. So we'll start by adding all of the dry ingredients into our food processor. You don't need to grate any of these. This machine is going to chop them up really finely for you. A lot of other recipes I've seen for keto pastry use cream cheese and all sorts of other strange ingredients. I don't understand why we don't just follow the same path as traditional pastries and just swap out the ingredients for lower carb versions. And that's really all I'm doing here with mine. So that's our dry ingredients in, and we'll just pop that on. And we'll just let the blades take those ground almonds down to a much finer consistency. Let it run until you can see the dry ingredients actually starting to clump a little bit. You can always come in as well and just pulse the mixer. That just helps to shake things up a little bit inside the dish. Now eventually you'll see that this will start to clump up because the oils and that bit of moisture left from the nuts, that will start to get into everything else and make it bind just a little bit. Yeah, that's looking good. And already, if you pull some of this out, you'll notice there are no large parts of almond flour in there. It's all been really heavily reduced down, and that's going to give you a really fine pastry. So we'll pop that back in, and we can now add in our cold lard. Now, make sure this lard has come straight from the fridge. You want lard to be as cold as possible. You want pastry to be as cold as possible. That's going to help it be more rollable and really maintain some elasticity. So we'll just pop that on. Now I'm just going to wait just 30 seconds for that lard to start blending into the dry ingredients there. And you can see that change happening right now. It's becoming much more granular. There we go. If I stop that and we pull that out again, you can see that's actually clumping together already just with that lard in there. It's a really different texture than we just had a moment ago. Pop that back in. Right, there. Now, our last stages, I'm going to add 10 mil, just 10 mil of our white cider vinegar. I'm using a 5 mil spoon measure. Now already you can see this is starting to ball. Now I'm going to slowly add my water. And the machine is just going to do the work for you and turn that into a perfect paste. And in a moment, it'll just start to ball and whiz around the machine. And there it goes. And that is your pastry made. Now all you need to do is take this out. We're now just going to scrape all of this out of here, wrap it up in some cling film and pop it in the fridge for an hour. And then all of the dry ingredients in there are going to take on all of that moisture and absorb that. And that's going to give us that nice, typical, smooth pastry that we're used to. Let's just pull all of this out, have some cling film ready. And you can see this is smooth, like putty. It's a wonderful consistency and just what we want for our pastry. Now I've prepared enough here to do my quite large pie tin, so you can upscale or downscale this recipe to really fit your needs. Just keep it that same half fat to flour recipe and you really can't go wrong with it. So we'll now pop that in the fridge, that'll stay there for an hour, and while we do that, I'll have a clear up and you can have a break. Welcome back to the Low Carb Cook. You join us after an hour when our pastry has been chilling down in the fridge and that now is ready to roll out. So we're going to grab that from our refrigerator, bring it back to our worktop. I'm going to use some more of our looping flour just to dust this surface. There still will be a little bit of stickiness to this, so we just want to make sure that it's not going to stick down to our worktop. So the first thing I'm going to do is just sort of roll it around and coat it in some of that flour to stop it sticking. But you can see already that it's a firm consistency, that putty-like texture. There, and that's ideal. Now, for my rolling, this is one of my favorite toys in the kitchen, my basic rolling pin, but I have these fantastic little silicone discs on the end, and they come in several different sizes. You put one of those on either end and they just help you to roll out your pastry or marzipan or icing, whatever you're working with, to a very specific thickness. So you can just start by gently rolling it out. Keep turning it as you're rolling it, just to help spread that out. Now I'm going to be filling with mine a 10-inch springform pan. Just to quickly show you these. These are great for when you're cooking something with pastry like a quiche. You can simply, once it's cooked, remove this base and release the entire piece, and it's so much easier to release then. So we want to make our pastry first of all in a disc to fit the base, and then we'll make the ring to go around the edge. So again, keep dusting with your flour and turn this periodically, just like you would with any traditional pastry, and also put some of that on your rolling pin. Again, you can upscale this recipe, downscale this recipe to give you as much as you need for whatever you're making. Now I'm just going to turn my pan upside down onto this, press it down. Now I know I have my perfect circle to fit inside, and what we'll do to stop our pastry sticking, I've got some coconut oil spray. I'm just going to spray that on the inside of this pan. Coconut oil, again, something you can have on keto, no problem at all. So I carefully lift this up. Look at that, wonderful. And I'm going to lay that into the bottom of my springform pan. And there you have an absolutely perfect fit. Put that aside and I'll bring my pastry back. Any bits that escaped, just grab those, bring them in. Redust my surface. And this time, I'll start squashing this into a length. So I want this to be wide enough that it's going to be just poking above the top of our pie tin. And again, those rollers on the side of the rolling pin just helping me to make sure that this gets rolled out to an even thickness. And it doesn't matter if you do this in stages, that's perfectly all right. I want one flat edge, so I'm going to use a pizza wheel cutter just to roll along there to give me a straight edge. Bring back our base. Now I already know this isn't going to be long enough to go all the way around, and that's fine. We can bring this back and roll out the offcuts and they'll finish going all the way around. There we go. This is where you may start to realise I am not a professional cook, and I've never claimed to be. Just take a knife. I angle mine up slightly so there's a little more poking above the top. And by pulling the knife back towards me, it's kind of forcing that pastry that's there to stick, which will help to stop it collapsing into the dish. Take our offcuts. A little more flour. And again, because we're doing this in sections, it's great that I know that this rolling pin is going to make this the same width every time. So again, get my clean edge. There. I can see I only need a few inches there. Push that in. Just give it a push so it combines with the other pieces. Again, pulled back with my knife. And there we have one lined tin. I'm just going to seal around there by getting some water. And a brush. And just by painting the water around that crease in the bottom corner, that's going to help that to bind together to form a seal. That kind of breaks down the mixture and this binds it together again. Run my finger around inside, get a nice smooth seam. Now I'm just going to prick the bottom to stop any air bubbles forming under the pastry and expanding. You can use the heat beads in the oven if you want to. Put a bit of parchment paper in the bottom of the tin first and put your beads in. But I find this particular pastry doesn't tend to collapse. So that's our lined tin. I'm going to blind bake this now for 15 minutes in the oven at 150 degrees centigrade, so quite a gentle temperature. Then we can bring this out and we can fill it. So 15 minutes later, and that's been blind baking in the oven, and it's ready to come out now. So we'll just pull this out. And there is our blind baked base, ready for the filling of your choice. So moving on to our filling. The first thing I'm going to do is turn our oven up. It's been on 150 degrees. I'm going to turn it up just a little more to about 175, 180 degrees. This is actually quite a long, slow bake to get through all of the filling mixture and actually bake it through. The next thing to do is fry up our bacon bits. So with a pan on my hob, I'm going to turn that up high, and we'll just wait for that to heat up, and we'll add in our 400 grams of bacon bits. I'll have a spatula ready to stir that through. Now, next thing is to add all of our wet ingredients. So that's our milk, our cream, and 12 eggs. I'm going to crack these eggs into a dish. I always crack eggs into a dish first to make sure I'm not getting any shell in that final mixture. There's nothing more off-putting than biting into a piece of eggshell in something you've made. Good, no shell. Tip those into our dish. There you go. And you can see why sometimes we need big jugs. I'm going to add my salt and my pepper. And I'm going to use one of my favourite kitchen toys, my nice cordless mixer. There we go. We'll blend that all up. And that's going to make a really wonderful, soft, scrambled egg. While that's just doing that, I'm going to turn down the heat a little on my bacon bits. I like my bacon to just start to burn a little bit. Not really burn, but just brown up and crisp. It adds all that extra smoked bacon flavour in there. Now you can add anything you want to into a quiche. You could add broccoli, tomato. As long as it's low carb, that's absolutely fine on this recipe. There we go. That's well blended now. Right, now we'll give our bacon a good stir through. This is looking great. That's got that coating on that a bit of seared bacon gets. It adds so much flavour into a dish. Perfect, that's ready. So we can turn that off now. So we'll bring in our pastry case. We are ready to start filling this up now, and I'm going to start with a good sprinkle of my cheddar cheese onto the still warm base. And next, small sprinkling of my bacon bits. I'm going to try and layer this up a bit like one of my keto lasagnas. I have a recipe for that, you should look it up on my channel. But this hopefully will have filling all the way through it. So we'll go in layers like this, just spreading things out to the edges, trying to make sure they're evenly spread throughout, and then add some of our mixture. Okay, and then I'm going to add another layer of our cheese, sprinkling it all the way around. And then again, some more bacon pieces. This is not going to be like one of these thin, cheap things you buy in the supermarket. This is going to have some real depth and texture and flavour to it. There we go, just spread those out. You could add a small amount of onion into this if you wanted to. For me, that's a higher carb ingredient that where I can leave onion out of something, I will. I think it's a good idea. Another sprinkle of cheese. This is the kind of thing you can eat when you are in ketosis, and I'm sure like me, all of your friends who are following the standard Western diet, they see the kind of things that you're eating, all this high-fat food, and wondering how on earth you're still alive. Well, frankly, that's the beauty of the low-carb diet. You can eat this kind of food and you will be fine. More bacon. There's nothing nicer for me than making your own food and knowing exactly what has gone into this. It makes a big difference to know that I'm not just consuming whatever a manufacturer thought they should be shoving in my dinner. I'm going to take this as close to the top as I dare before it starts to go through a crack in the pastry. There you go, we'll sprinkle in the rest of our cheese there. Throw in the rest of our bacon pieces. Add a tiny bit more filling. There, I'm going to get the oven door open ready now because that's a lot to handle. So this is ready to go into our oven at about 180 degrees centigrade for around 45 minutes. Now that's a lot of mixture to cook through, so it's not a precise time. We'll test this at certain points, but you can really tell when this is starting to cook through because the egg mixture will start to puff up. So we'll pop that in. There we go, and while that's in and you're watching that, I'm going to clear up this mess and we'll take another quick break. So our quiche has been in the oven for just over an hour now, and we've been lowering the temperature slowly so it doesn't burn. So let's pull this out and see what we've got. Wow, that is looking absolutely magnificent. And we're going to give it one more quick dip test just to make sure that that comes out cleanly. And there you are, that's cooked through perfectly. Now, while we wait for that to cool right down, you can take a look at the macros. So our quiche has been chilling in the fridge for a couple of hours. It's nicely cooled down and it's firmed up, and that means it's ready to slice. So let's take a look and see what we've got. Nice crumbly pastry. You can see it already starting to flake a bit there and come off in little places. Just slip that knife underneath. Wow, look at that. That's absolutely stunning. So you see, this is another classic recipe that can so easily be converted to a low-carb favorite with my low-carb pastry, and one you can enjoy as much as you like. Now, I have lots of delicious everyday low-carb and keto recipes on my channel. If you've enjoyed this one, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to The Low Carb Cook, and ding that bell to get notifications when new recipe videos are uploaded. Make sure you also check out my rich short crust pastry recipe video for the perfect sweet dessert version of this pastry. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Low Carb Cook. Hey, thanks for watching The Low Carb Cook. If you enjoyed this episode, why not watch one of our playlists or this recommended video? Click on the logo below to subscribe. Join us on any of our social pages, or if you'd like to show a bit more love, you can support the channel on buymeacoffee.com using the link below.
For even more great stuff, check out the website, thelowcarbcook.com.